Welcome in to episode 347 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. We are back. We are here in our normal office-y setting instead of our live in-person show last week, which was an absolute blast, and the feedback on it was terrific. Shout out Jimmy Mahan. That like all the expectations I had going into that show were just so far exceeded, and none of it was possible without Jimmy. So shout out Jimmy. Make sure you go see our friends over at Kentucky Roadshow Shop in Lexington. They are the absolute best, but we are back with our normal affairs here on the Sources Say podcast on just the KSR YouTube channel live here on Tuesday night. Sean Smith, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good, Jack. It feels good to getting closer to the fall. I know it doesn't feel like it when we're outside right now because it's super hot, but almost September, football season's here, which then means we're even closer to basketball season and actually seeing what we've been talking about for 5 months now in action. So no, this is entering my favorite time of the year. College football right around the corner, college basketball coming. Feels good to be back in this setup, honestly. Like I like doing in person, but also still like our little studio setup that we got here.
And it's going to be a fun one because we have done several mailbags over just our time doing this show. The feedback's always really good on those because it's a chance for us to interact with fans and kind of get their questions in to us about what the team looks like, what recruiting looks like, the future of the program, just kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff that just kind of pops up here and there and everywhere. So we're going to roll through that tonight. We have dozens upon dozens of questions to go through. So that's going to make up the bulk of our show. But Sean, the biggest news, the one that all fans are just sitting on the edge of their seat for, Jasper Johnson, in-state Lexington kid, 5-star, top 20 recruit in the country, is set to make his final decision on September 5th from Woodford County High School. It's the one that we've all been very impatiently waiting for, the one where there's just been so much back and forth and the rumors and the drama and a lot of it made up and just for the sake of storylines and just to kind of create something out of nothing. It's become just this recruitment has created a life of its own, and it's finally coming to an end. And we're very excited to kind of just receive some clarity one way or the other, to know just what this Kentucky recruiting class is going to look like. There's a lot of Alabama buzz at times, a lot of UNC buzz swinging back in Kentucky's direction. One way or another, we know what is going to happen next Thursday live from Woodford County. He has moved into Overtime Elite for his senior year of high school. So he's coming all the way back home, Sean, to make his commitment. Significant or not? What is your take on that?
I think it is, but at the same time, he's coming back to a place that means a lot to him, but it's hard to overlook how that could factor in and be a good thing for Kentucky, right? You're right here in your backyard announcing we're going to college with the people that supported you for your entire life. So it makes sense to do it from there, but I think it just means even more for Kentucky, honestly. And then you had the switch in momentum kind of change over the last week or so, which has been a good thing too, Jack, because now we're starting to kind of inch closer to putting all that talk to the side about could Mark Pope get it done. We went back and forth there in July, early August, talking about what it would mean if they don't land him, what it would mean if they do land him, and we kind of made arguments for both sides. But in the end, we've both hoped that he's a Kentucky Wildcat. And now that we're getting a set commitment date, we start to see that the buzz has been in favor of Kentucky now, and hopefully that's the way that this thing goes here in the next couple of weeks.
I'll lean on you here shortly to just kind of give a sense of what his commitment would mean as a player and just kind of the fit of Jasper, what he would bring to the table alongside Malachi Moreno and maybe some of the other recruiting options that Kentucky is going after. But I just want to point out that we have been pretty outspoken on this show that maybe the very public movement hasn't been as wishy-washy as maybe social media and message boards would maybe indicate, and that Kentucky has always felt that it was very much in the thick of things when the general public just kind of wrote them off. That when it was deemed an Alabama versus North Carolina battle, Kentucky was always looming and sitting there as like the comfortable as that dark horse, like comfortable as the, okay, we know that all of the connections with Jasper and his family and the ties and the work that we've put in, and yeah, yes, we don't have the years of relationship developed the way Hubert Davis had been able to at North Carolina, the way Nate Oates at Alabama had been able to. They had to make up some ground in a hurry, and maybe the NIL situations weren't totally what up to par for Jasper's side of things there for a while. But Kentucky always sat there and said, I wouldn't necessarily trade our spot with anybody else. Even back when Kentucky was considered way out of the running. If you talk to people around the program, they said, we're cool with where we stand. We'll let people kind of believe what they want to believe, but we feel comfortable about this. And I've relayed the message on this show over and over and over again that they have always felt that they were right there in it. Go figure. Here we are a week out from the announcement. And in the last week, the last 10 days or so, Kentucky has really just kind of stormed from behind and kind of overtaken the lead in the general public, and all the crystal balls and RPM picks and everything coming in indicate that Kentucky could be on the cusp of landing a 5-star, Mark Pope's first as the head coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. It's been a lot. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes to get to this point. I think a lot of kind of half truths that have turned into whole truths publicly, that it took some digging and took some grinding for Kentucky to get to this point. But I think that they still would not trade their position with anybody else coming into the home stretch of this commitment next week.
No, and I mean, if it was money, if it was NIL that kind of was the deciding factor here, then obviously this turns into a bidding war when it comes down to what each program can offer, and to go from not being the school to kind of being the overwhelming favorite now, something had to change, Jack. And the only thing in my eyes that could have changed was how much NIL, right? Like, because you knew what Kentucky's about, he knew what Alabama's about, he knows what North Carolina's about, but maybe if this comes down to it, and the only thing that was keeping you from getting him maybe or being in the lead at one point was the amount that he could get in going to Kentucky, if you're Jasper and you're that camp, you're probably wanting as much as possible. And if you get it, and to me, if Kentucky, let's say Kentucky had a set amount of dollars that they wanted to go, and they thought this is what their value of this was, and then they had to bump it and go even more to not get the negative PR hit this early on, Jack, it's worth it. Like, it's worth to, if you think you're okay, this is what I'm going with, but now there's more here that we can extend. I think it's worth it to not get the negative PR, because that's what you're avoiding in this, and you're getting a good player. You're getting a guy in your program. It's an in-state kid, a legacy kid, to go with another in-state player. You're off to a good start. And what it eliminates is any kind of the negative attention. It'd be like, well, Mark Pope can't even get a guy that's in his backyard that has a family ties to Kentucky. It's not necessarily a guy until Mark Pope goes and gets a guy that's out of the state without ties to the state, but it's a ginormous step in the right direction. And I think Kentucky is getting a very, very good player if it goes in their favor next week.
And let me slightly play devil's advocate with you, because we have talked pretty extensively that Mark Pope can't play for PR wins, because wins are not determined by PR. But the way Kentucky has played this, I think, has been the payoff has been really good. So it's my understanding that the offer that they put out there, it was, we see you as this tier caliber of kid, love you, but we also feel like we're in a really good spot with 3-4 other guys in a similar tier that we could also get for X number of dollars. So for you to be a Lexington kid, for you to have the ties that you do with, dad being who he is, grandpa being who he is, uncle being who he is, mom being a Yeast, like the unbelievable ties to Kentucky. If this isn't good enough, then maybe the fit just isn't where it needs to be. Maybe if you really want to kind of forge your own path and be your own guy and say, I love you, UNC, go do that. If you want, if you think that Alabama is the right fit for you because they have, worked tirelessly, they were desperate to land your commitment up to this point, and it's going to come down to a couple dollars here or there, then maybe that is the right fit for you. I think that initially was a turnoff to Jasper's side, where it was like, wait, so you got Alabama desperate for me, you got North Carolina desperate for me, but you're not going to be. So that kind of created, when there was the talk of Alabama, North Carolina kind of firmly ahead, that's where a lot of that stuff was coming from. But it was never out of disrespect. It was more so saying, hey, wearing this Kentucky jersey is going to create the dollars. Like again, we saw what happened when things go right with Reed Shepherd. They go really, really, really right. If you come here as an in-state kid and you're a hit the way that you should believe that you are, then the money's going to take care of itself. And if it does come down to a couple bucks here or there, then are our priorities really where they need to be? Is that the right approach for what we are prioritizing with this program? And that is, we're winning a national championship. We're bringing dudes in here that want to win a national championship first and foremost. So that's where the disconnect was. That's where things kind of got a little foggy, and Kentucky held its ground. Where things changed was the internal push with a lot of the local ties. Again, what we're talking about, where the money will take care of itself, because if you're a local kid, the local love will be there. Those local individuals kind of stepped in and said, man, Jasper Johnson being at Kentucky, we want that. We want to do whatever it takes to land that kid. So they stepped in and kind of took care of the rest and kind of put their money where their mouth is and said, hey, we'll split the difference. Whatever it takes to get this kid, let's make this happen. So that's where that extra love comes in, where it's like, okay, we already knew that the Kentucky staff really, really, really wanted us to be here, weren't going to overpay, but definitely wanted us to be a part of this program. And now you have all of them. I mean, you got the football side stepping in, you have local boosters and donors that are just kind of coming together and saying, let's make this happen, man. Jasper Johnson is a 5-star from Lexington, Kentucky, whose dad was a superstar pass rusher for the football program. That dude has to wear Kentucky across his chest at Rupp Arena year 2 under Mark Pope. Let's make this happen. So there was just so many different things at play that kind of got us to this point, where I think Kentucky always kind of felt that the stuff would take care of itself, and his heart in Lexington would kind of continue to call him back home, and we would get to this final destination. That's where the internal confidence always came from. So it's been a long journey, but I think the end destination is going to be one that absolutely favors the Wildcats.
And obviously, we got to wait and see what that final decision is. So we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves on this and things, and then it come back and him not be at Kentucky. But it certainly looks good for Kentucky right now. And if it plays out, I think the decision internally all along was, I want to go to UK. It's just about, does all these other things match me going there? Like, if I can get more by going to Alabama or North Carolina, and we don't know the amount that's on the table exactly, like, there's numbers that's been thrown out there. But if that was the only factor that was keeping those schools there ahead of Kentucky, then credit to Kentucky and relationships and whatever it is that takes place to get this done. And you made a good point. We have talked extensively about not having to win PR battles. And we've both said it. This was one that even if you did lose it, you were going to get negative PR regardless, right? Like, even if I think Kentucky was still going to be okay as a class, even though I think they can still put a good roster together next year, not getting the local kid that's from right down the road with such a strong family connection, it was going to be turned on Pope and twisted and like, oh, Mark Pope can't get guys. Mark Pope can't recruit. I don't think that was going to be like a damaging thing to the program if that were to play out, but it would certainly just be a negative run of a few weeks here until they do go get somebody else to kind of soften the blow. Well, you got Malachi in the class. Now you're trending in the good direction for Jasper. I'm all about positive momentum over negative momentum. You're starting to stack some positive here if this plays out, and then you can kind of then maybe go flex and go get a Braylon Mullins or go get somebody else. And then you start to earn a reputation, Jack, that you can recruit and do some of the other things that you're doing. I think that's what getting him avoids. There's not a negative step along the journey here to get where you want to go. Instead of having to drop a little and then climb out of a hole, there's no hole to be in.
Yeah, and we'll obviously talk a lot about it next week. If and when this becomes official, the way we definitely hope. But I think at the end of the day, it's both sides winning. It's Kentucky making its case and saying we got to establish some baseline that we're not just going to turn every little thing into a bidding war. Everything's not going to be, kind of giving into agents, giving into, all these different factors at play. At some point, we have to kind of have a foundational backbone as a program and say, here's what our values are going to be moving forward. Here's what our culture is going to be. We got to get the guys that want to be here for the right reasons. And I think it was not that we don't want to be a part of that on Jasper's side. It was, well, that's great, but these other coaches, Alabama was the first school to offer him a high major offer. That's some real relationship stuff. That's a legitimate connection that's hard to overcome, where it's like, okay, they're doing this and they're offering me more. UNC the same way. You got Hubert Davis calling me every single day with an unbelievable NIL package, and I'm supposed to just because I'm a Lexington kid and because I have some family ties that keep me, that want to keep me home, that I'm just supposed to kind of lose track of the people that have prioritized me from day one. Like, it was, both sides were correct in their approach with this. And I think both sides are going to win, because I do think at the end of the day, and again, we'll talk a lot more about it when the decision becomes official. But like, I do think that the home factor did kind of start settling in a little bit for Jasper. It was like, man, the idea of going to Alabama sounds awesome. The idea of going to North Carolina sounds awesome. But man, that's going to be really inconvenient for some of the closest people in my life, my loved ones, my family members, my friends that, have been there for day one, since day one for me, since I first picked up a basketball, that now it's going to be harder for them to kind of see that vision through for me at the next level. Like, they're going to have to turn on their TV instead of being there physically in person. So it's a lot. It's a really complicated decision that I think both sides just kind of look at themselves in the mirror and kind of meet in the middle. And I think that's exactly how this thing is unfolding. Again, still 9 days at this point for that decision to become official. But, it would be a really, really, really significant piece for Kentucky. And, we'll talk a lot about the mailbag, a lot of recruiting questions about just kind of what the next steps are for Kentucky. This is going to answer a lot of those steps. This is a massive domino that you get kind of an anchoring guard. You have the anchor in the middle with Malachi Moreno. Now you kind of have your anchoring piece in the backcourt, and now everything else is about kind of piecing together everything else around them. That's an unbelievable position to be in when you're still 3 months away from the early signing period.
Oh, it is. And the one thing too that just so happens to align with Mark Pope entering a new era of Kentucky basketball is you got an elite end guard in the rankings that's from the state of Kentucky, that has a deep family connection to the university. And you just so happen to have a 7-footer who's ranked the top at his position in the country right up the road. You got both ends of it, Jack. Like, that doesn't happen a lot in the state. When it does, you have to secure it. And it looks like Kentucky's super close to doing that. Now, when it comes down to how much those guys make impacts as freshmen, I know there's going to be a lot of talk. Is this a one and done? Is this a starting guard scenario? I don't know. I still feel if Kentucky, let's say they take 4 freshmen in this class, and we'll get into this in mailbag. I'm sure there's tons of questions. I haven't seen them, but I still think after this is done, high school recruiting class, graduating a lot of super seniors this year. There's going to be a spot there in the spring where you're going to look up and Kentucky's going to have a shot to target, I think, one of the top 2 or 3 point guards in the transfer portal. Because that I'm envisioning that already on this roster being a key need going into the spring. I would love for him to be a part of this and then go get a veteran lead guard that can take the pressure off these young guys in this class, like a Jasper Johnson, if he commits to Kentucky, that then lets him do his thing on the floor. But I feel like Mark Pope's system at all times at the University of Kentucky, Jack, it's going to need a veteran guard to lead it. If you have a veteran guard leading it, I think that you're always going to flow and be able to do what you want to do offensively. Jasper is going to have some. I know we're getting far ahead of ourselves here, but if he's at Kentucky, I would feel much better if there's other guys there, like some veteran guys to play with, and I think then he can settle in and kind of do what he does best. Going to make shots. He's dynamic. He's quick. He's got a lot of upside. But we also know that this isn't going to be a program that's kind of built around freshmen leading the way. It's going to be freshmen helping lead the way. And I think that this is a heck of a start if Kentucky gets it done next week.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there and kind of transition a little bit. We'll obviously have that covered as extensively as imaginable next week. But until then, we have a deep mailbag we got to get to. But before that, Sean, it's my favorite time of year because fall is right around the corner. We obviously have basketball a little bit away, but first football weekend is coming up. College football season is here. And I just love it. I have so many just unbelievable memories of going to Kroger Field, going to some of my favorite football, basketball games growing up. And now you have a chance to do that as well. As Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I don't know about you, Sean, but now is the time to be looking through Game Time, now more than ever.
Yes, and I love Game Time. We went through this, last season and how easy it is to get in there, get in these venues. This is my favorite time of year too. Now my role is obviously changing because I'm going to have to use Game Time now because I'm not going to be there, with you in these environments covering these things. So my view of games are going to change. So, seeing it and being able to see it before you get there, Jack, is a big thing too. So definitely Game Time is the way to go.
So just looking through the Game Time Picks right now, which is a brand new feature that I absolutely love, you can get this amazing deal. Section 31, row 43 for all-in price of $81 right here on the app, where no extra nonsense fees, no things that, those sneaky deals at the very end where you go, whoa, why do I have $45 extra of fees? Why did my tickets just double at the final checkout? Those things are a thing of the past, all thanks to Game Time Picks. Just here to tell you, there's nothing better out there. Game Time Picks, the curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. All-in pricing, as I said before, toggling this feature shows up the all-out total at the very beginning, no surprise fees at checkouts, then seat views. I love being able to know exactly where I'm going to be sitting. I did that whenever I bought the Boston Celtics Indiana Pacers game in the Eastern Conference Finals. That was a blast. It was a unique seat in the stadium, in the arena, and I was like, I don't know where I'm sitting. Is this too good to be true? It was not. I showed up. It was exactly the way I envisioned it by looking at the app, and the lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Make sure you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code KSR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code KSR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. And then also, while we're at it, Our friends at My Perfect Franchise are back. The Sources podcast is brought to you by Andy Ludicky and MyPerfectFranchise.net. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. Sean, look at me. We're not even the last 5 minutes of the show. We're knocking out our ads. Aren't you proud of me?
I am proud of you. That's the earliest that I've seen Andy in a while. So no, but it's when you're reading the Game Time ad and putting My Perfect Franchise and stuff up there, like that means one thing, and that means that we're right here at the season. Because when you start getting that to be a part of the show and we start talking about it and our view from seats and getting in the building, it's close. So yeah, I am proud of you because there have been a couple of those marathon episodes we had that were like, oh my gosh.
And how about that? Callaway Mills, 10 rows back to the game Saturday, section 23 for $75 on Game Time. Come on, man. Like you just can't beat that. So
I'm going to miss being there this year. I'm telling you. Like,
you don't have to miss it. You can be there thanks to our friends at Game Time.
I am. And the first time that I use Game Time and get in the stadium, I'm going to tweet out a picture from my seats with the Game Time code and with the Game Time plug. But this will be my first time in 8 years actually having to pay to get into a college football or basketball event. That's a really weird thing for me.
Hey, it costs to be a coaching guru the way you are, Sean Smith. Let's jump right into our mailbag. There are a lot of them, so we're going to have to go rapid fire through. So we'll dig into the nuts and bolts on several, but definitely need to kind of hustle through them to not make this a 3-hour show. We'll go one by one. Whoever started first gets first dibs. So Yeti Season says, what's the one thing most people won't see while watching games this year that junkies like me will see? For example, UConn games, all the off-ball screens and movement. Will this offense have similar action or will it be more random? That is a Sean Smith question if I've ever heard one.
I think transitions and flow will be the biggest thing that will stand out, that the 45 cuts and how they manipulate the tags defensively when they're on offense. Like they're going to change the help line a ton, Jack. We saw that in the film room that you and I broke down all summer, how it is intentional, how a guy will make a 45 cut just to create a double gap for somebody to drive and creates an open space. Those things that we talked about on film, and you're seeing me now put up some other stuff on social media. And all this extra time is kind of allowing me to kind of just do all basketball stuff here. So my Twitter feed is going to be covered with game actions, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of Mark Pope and what Kentucky's doing the morning after games and stuff. I'll go back and I'm thinking about doing like my top 5 favorite sets from each like Kentucky game this season and throwing them out there, and then maybe getting on the show and talking about them and things too. But I think the movement and the not standing around and the cutting with a purpose is something that I think that everybody is going to be able to see. And you're not going to see them get hung up and stop a lot. We talk about keeping dribbles alive. That is a major thing for Mark Pope at BYU. It is already a major thing for what he's doing at Kentucky. You keep your dribble alive, cut. Somebody's getting open on a back cut. Somebody's getting some miscommunication, getting a wide open 3. I just think the movement overall, Jack, is going to be the thing that's going to be the biggest difference.
We're going complete 180 here. Jacob Polachek, best advice for training a dog with separation anxiety. This one is for Sean specifically.
Poor Atticus.
I have no answers. I mean, at this point, if your dog is just going to chew up your couches and your, all of that.
He's not kidding, because I've been with him, and Jacob will go in the store to get something, or maybe goes in and gets a coffee, and I'm sitting outside and I have Atticus and he's losing his mind. Like about to break down doors just to try to get to Jacob. But once Jacob's back, probably one of the best dogs ever. When Jacob's not around, he's a tear.
all bets are off. Atticus stinks. So, all things considered, he stinks.
Jacob, maybe somebody can get you in the comments here on the YouTube and maybe help you out because Jack and I don't have much for you.
Sorry about that. Although I came in, I came in today. Katie and I were out. We walked in the door, and there were not one but two puddles of vomit on the ground from Benny, and we were like, "Oh, that's good." And I still don't know why. I makes no sense. It's just that's just kind of like owning a dog. Like once you have them, like just random things pop up on any given day on a random basis, where it's just like, okay, that's life. As you know, it's kind of like when you get peed on for the first time with a newborn baby. It's like didn't have this on my bingo card with my life growing up. Didn't think that I would be walking into big piles of vomit on the ground, but you know what? That's life. I didn't expect to get peed on by infants, but you know what? That's just kind of that's life. That's just what happens. So, best of luck to you, Jacob. I have no advice. This one's a good one. We'll both have an answer for this one. Anon1704, bunch of numbers, says, "What was the game that decided Calipari won't or can't be the coach for Kentucky anymore for you?"
Oakland for sure. Because last year we went into this and a lot, we got some criticism at times last year. I feel like on this show where people wanted us to go all in and be negative, and we had our moments where we would break down their issues defensively, their issues rebounding. We know that not being able to guard got them beat against Gonzaga, not being able to guard got them beat in multiple games in the SEC. It was never the offensive end of the floor, but you and I were holding off until what? We kept saying, we got to see what they do in the NCAA tournament because that's the end all be all deciding factor. When they didn't advance, that shifted everything for me in my mindset. And that's when I started saying that it was time for a separation. Still didn't think we were going to get it because I never thought Kentucky was going to fire him. They didn't. I didn't see the separation happening the way that it did, but I think that game that night, if you remember in our group text, I texted 5 minutes into the game and I said, there's no way they're winning this game. All those issues and kind of alarms were signaling already 5 minutes in that they weren't going to win. And that was the moment. Not St. Peter's. St. Peter's was obviously the weight that was always hanging over, but this was the nail in the coffin.
And I kind of want to include the SEC tournament with that because there was a sense of just disconnect with that, where it was like the fan base really poured everything into that event. There was a sense of, hey man, like we haven't been to a Sunday in Nashville in years. Can we at least like this has been a really fun year, man. Can we at least get to a Sunday? And then we even said if we can win the SEC championship, does that lower the bar for what the demand is going to be in the NCAA tournament? We kind of said if they win it all, if they win on Sunday in the SEC championship, you kind of live with a second weekend. If they were to lose in the Sweet 16, you at least go, you know what? That was a fun freaking year, and it is what it is. Losses happen. They got to a second weekend. We're trending back in the right direction. You know, it felt, but when they lost in that opening game in Nashville, after kind of the crap talking that Cal did leading up to that, of going, you guys are wanting them to lose. You guys are putting, oh, they have to go this far. Kind of the feeding into the banter and feeding into that noise. You kind of felt it coming, when he walked off the floor after that loss in Texas A&M, and you saw the vitriol with the fan base and going, this is no longer acceptable. That was kind of the first time for me that it was like, ooh, we might, this is trending in a direction of no return. It kind of feels like, and then, had they turned that around and wanted, gone on a run, that could have changed things. But man, it really did feel like the tide started turning quite significantly down in that opening round loss in Nashville.
It did, and it felt like the weight of the world was on the program's shoulders, honestly. And I think that this has been a good thing for Kentucky. I think it's been a good thing for John Calipari. And we said that all spring, that we thought it was the perfect separation. I mean, obviously, I never envisioned him being in Arkansas. I definitely didn't think he would ever be putting out post on X about dinosaur nugget, or not dinosaur nuggets. What used to be dino nuggets popular are now little hogs.
Hog nuggets.
Hog nuggets. Like, uh, I mean, eating a dinosaur nugget as a kid was normal. I don't know about eating a razor nugget like that. That seems a little odd to me, but I never thought that would be where we are in 2024 as John Calipari, the head coach at Arkansas. But what it did is it got Kentucky off the hook for all that money that was to be owed. And it was time to just have a separation, and you didn't fire him to do it. Like, it's one of those things, Jack, that if you go back 5 years, I don't think any of us would have envisioned or seen that this would be where we are, but it is. And I feel like that it's a turn of the page, but it's a good turn of the page. I think it's a healthy turn of the page for both sides, honestly. And, I wish Cal the best in what he's doing. I liked Cal as a human being. Didn't always agree with what he did as a coach, but he did a lot for this program, and I wish him well for sure.
My guy Shay says, can you and Sean pick an all-time Kentucky starting five, but comprise it of guys who have the best chance of winning a game without being able to make a three? So essentially the most talented five guys who are the worst shooting team. Wayne Turner, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Isaiah Briscoe, etc.
So these are guys that have hit threes, right? But just
no shooting. Just guys who can win you games in other ways besides shooting. Starting five who can't shoot.
Can we come back to this one, or we answered it? Because I might have to
think about it. So one that as soon as I read that question, Nerlens Noel came to my mind, a guy that was such a non-factor outside of 2 feet offensively, but did so much to impact the game outside of that. Like, Nerlens Noel was a dog. I mean, that he was, for my money, I don't know if I want to say the best defender that Cal has had in those 15 years, but that dude was, because the team stunk, he didn't get the flowers that he deserves. And I think you got to include him in any list that includes non-shooters.
Daniel, assist to Daniel here in the chat, Oscar.
True.
I mean, Oscar Sheboy. I mean, you're taking a.
Are we putting Oscar and Nerlens Noel side by side and at the 4 and 5?
God, you got some poor spacing on the offensive end.
You can't shoot. You're not shooting anyway. So what difference does it make?
That's true. I mean, you gotta. I guess the criteria here would be a certain 3-point percentage, like, right, when it comes to some of these guards. I'm having to think on who I would put on the perimeter for sure. Obviously, I'm thinking way, way back Kentucky days of some guys that could shoot. Wayne Turner, I think that's a good one too.
MKG's got to be on there too. I mean, he won you a championship as a non-shooter.
Daniel again with an assist. Rondo was not known for his jumper.
Hey, so
you're talking about a defensive lineup. Let's go ahead on Rondo.
I mean, Wayne Turner, Michael Kidd, Isaiah Briscoe, man, that he was the all-time. That dude could cook you like barbecue chicken.
He played out of position for 2 years at Kentucky. Out of position.
I love Isaiah Briscoe, man. I love him.
If you would have had him on any, look at the guards he played with. He played with Tyler Ulis and Jamal Murray, and then comes back and plays with De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk.
And was a dog on both of those teams.
He was Robin to both those duos of Batman.
As the number one point guard in high school coming out.
Yeah. He honestly would have been, like, his numbers and things, and we would have talked about him differently if it had just been him leading the way with another guy. But he's probably, when you think about it, one of the more unselfish role guys that has played in this program, that for where he was in rankings for the guys that he played with.
Somebody else brought up Liggins. I thought about him too, but he also did hit an unbelievably massive three in Kentucky's run.
Well,
so it does kind of feel like, well, he did. I know he's not a shooter, but he did hit arguably the biggest shot in that entire run to get to the Final Four. So
I'm trying to think back if there's anyone else that just stands out to me from those early.
Somebody said Cal would love this lineup.
Yeah, throwing Archie Goodwin just for the heck of it.
All right. Well, let's think on it. If you have any more in the chat, keep those rolling. That's a great question from my guy Shay. This is pertinent for myself this upcoming week. Buck and Barbell, I think. Yeah, Buck and Barbell. So I'm going on a massive family vacation to Disney this upcoming week. 16 of us going down there with 6 babies / young children. So it's going to be a lot. It's going to be as hectic as imaginable. So thoughts and prayers to the Pilgrim household, please. Thank you. We would be very grateful for that. But Buck and Barbell says, now that you're going to Disney World with young children, rate your top 3 theme parks for children. For children or for just anybody? Because for myself personally, I feel like Kings Island, Universal Studios, and Cedar Point for what I've been able to go to. I mean, I know there are a bunch of others that are, up there, but I feel like those are probably the best of the best. But I'm a big roller coaster guy. I'm a big, thrill seeker. But there. Orlando has had, I think Disney has added a lot more to kind of make it more welcoming for the adults too, not just kiddie rides everywhere. So that's a tough one because it is definitely geared more toward young children. And if you're above a teenager, it's kind of, you're kind of too old for it. So trying to think of the most inclusive amusement parks. Hey, are you an amusement park guy?
It's a funny story. So I lost my debit card this week, and I know you're probably wondering where's this going, but I don't know where it's at. I had to replace it, but I think the saddest thing about it is I had a Dollywood season pass from like 2016 in there that I just so happened to find the other day, and it was stuck to the back of my card, my bank card. And I was like, I didn't even know this thing was buried in my wallet. Don't look the same like it did in 2016, but I just so happened to lose that with my card this week. So that was my amusement part.
So Dollywood.
Yeah, I love Dollywood. You can do everything at Dollywood.
Yeah. I've never been to Dollywood. That's one that I've always wanted to go to. I've heard great things about it.
We go.
Holiday World's underrated too. Those free soft drinks and it being so unbelievably clean. That's underrated. That's up there. I'm just not a big wooden roller coaster guy. I hate feeling like I have scoliosis getting off a roller coaster.
I went to a place somewhere near Washington, D.C. I can't remember what the name of it is. Maybe somebody in the chat will remember. And it was a good one. Can't believe I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, what are the chances I lose? I mean, it's an old one, right? Like I'm not getting in from 2016, but I just thought it was funny that we're talking amusement parks, and I just so happened to lose an 8-year-old season pass this week.
That is
Dollywood's fun though.
I gotta go. I definitely gotta go. I'm pulling up the player rankings right now so we can talk about this in real time. But the ghost of Pete Gillen, shout out. He's been on this show, by the way. Immaculate suit. Build the best 2025 basketball recruiting class you can. The rules: you get one top 10 guy. Let's say no AJ Debinsa for fun. 2 guys from 10 to 25, and 2 guys ranked 25 or lower in the rankings. So the best possible class imaginable. So if we want to start
for 2025
for 2025, so
we're going. You
one
want
top 10
together?
If you want, or if you have your own takes on it, but one top 10 guy, 2 10 to 25 guy, and then 2 ranked 25 or lower. I would go. I would go. Give me Darren. Ooh, that's tough. That's tough. Do you have any that you want for certain? So I'm in
the same boat as you. I
want Tunde in that second unit that 10 to 25 because he's a producer. He's going to go out there and produce no matter what. So I know I want Tunde, and I will take. I mean, I'll take Malachi because he's the number one center in the class, and I feel like there's some familiarity there. So I would love that one. But my top 10 guy, I feel like you got to get a star 4, like a wing 3-4. But then who's your?
You said we
I
can't
feel
take
like Darren. I feel like you got to take Darren because he's going to be the most productive primary ball handler guy who's going to go get you buckets. I'm confident in this. I'm going Darren as my top 10 guy as the go getter there. I'm going Tunde and Malachi as my 10 to 25, and then 225 or lower. I will take Braylon Mullins for shooting. And is there anybody else that sticks out to you?
I was going Mullins in mine, but my guy was going to be Cameron Boozer. And and then I was going to go. Honestly, I almost was going to go Caden for the connection because
that would add
you have two guys playing together. But Braylon and Malachi were both in mine with Cameron Boozer. I'm gonna go Jasper too.
Man, that's an excellent question. I feel like I'm on the right page though. Or do I try? Yeah. Because there's so much talent at the 4 spot up top, like Caleb Wilson, Chris Sinak, and Nate Ament. Like that's a lot of talent there, and it's kind of top heavy. Not as many
leaving out
4s.
Peterson too. Like, I mean, it's like you're leaving. Like, there's a lot of good guys in that at the top.
But like, could you trade out Jasper for Darren, knowing that you're going to get the scoring, or would you just go get a Caden as your one?
I'll tell you the guy that I'm taking
scoring.
The guy I'm taking every time. I'm telling you, I'm taking Braylon Mullins every single time.
He's
going to be a guy I think that's going to outperform where he's ranked.
I think so too. He's very, very, very good, and Kentucky is in a very unique spot now with Jasper and how to navigate that moving forward, because they do kind of have some similarities with skill sets, and we'll see what that happens. But there's some questions about recruiting moving forward. So great question. I think we're kind of on the same page. I think I nailed my list, but great question goes to Pete Gillen. He also added, with football getting started, can you and Sean run 40-yard dashes on camera and get some times? Could you run a 40-yard dash right now? I mean, I know you could, but like without pulling a hamstring or something.
So I got out of the car at Speedway the other day after I got back from Bowling Green for the Douglas's season opener, and my Achilles was so tight I thought I was going to rupture it just walking into the restroom. So I don't know, like, properly stretched. Give me an athletic trainer on site.
Ooh,
I can still move.
So on that note, Chase Peterson goes to Pete Gillen, says Nate Ament, Braden Burries, Flemings, Shelton Henderson, and Eric Reeby is his. That's a great list too. I mean, that's definitely kind of steering away from the Kentucky specific guys, because 3 of those guys are guaranteed to not be going to Kentucky, and the other 2 are very, very big toss-ups. But that's a strong 5. This is such an unbelievably deep class of 2025. So you really don't have a wrong answer. And I think Kentucky's dealing with those questions right now. They're really struggling with like how to navigate that right now, because there are a lot of, like, take Malachi, for instance. There was a thought going into Malachi's commitment that Kentucky just, I don't want to say assumed, but just said, we're only getting one of them. We're going to move forward with one of them. And then after taking Malachi's commitment, Eric Reeby kind of stepped in and said, whoa, I'd play with Malachi. I think that we have some complementary skill sets. Why not? Why can't we do it? And that kind of, Kentucky did not go into that thinking that they were going to take both, but they both kind of talked about it and said, well, could there be a fit there? maybe, like, let's at least talk about it. There's no reason to just kind of part ways right now. Let's at least just kind of take it a step further and see if there's a fit. So kind of those types of dynamics where it's like, yeah, do we take two bigs now? So it's so deep that you kind of have to ask some of those questions and just be able to be fluid and be able to kind of adjust on the fly and say maybe the blueprint that we had when we built our big board isn't necessarily going to be the case the way we wrap up in the spring signing period. Because what happens if you make up ground with Caleb Wilson and he says, I'm feeling love, man. I feel like Kentucky's home, but you already had five guys signed in the fall. You go, we ain't turning down Caleb Wilson. I guess we got to take Caleb Wilson. So that's something that they're dealing with right now that we will. I'm very interested to see how all of that unfolds. Devin Hunt, 2002. What is your ideal class under Mark Pope for 2025 and also the most realistic? Also, now that the schedule is out, what is your prediction of our overall record and where we finish in the tournament? You answer that second question while I think of that first part.
So I've always felt like that this team, even before we saw the schedule, I think they're gonna win their fair share of games. It's still hard to really kind of nail down how good I think they can be or what I think they can be in the NCAA tournament. I think they're going to have an advantage over some of the last few teams at Kentucky just because of the veteran presence. The system that they play in, I think, is going to be able to win games maybe where they look like this team is not going to be one of the most talented teams that Mark Pope's going to have. But I think the system is going to make them seem more talented at times. And I think that Tubby had a lot of teams like that in his early time at Kentucky where the collective unit itself outperformed what the actual talent was within its walls. This is one of those teams that I think if it clicks and you got enough shooting and you got enough different lineup combinations. Now, looking at that schedule, obviously the one early is Duke. If you can find a way to steal that early in the season and ride some momentum through some of those non-conference games, I think you got a chance. But I'm going to say they settle in somewhere around 22 wins regular season. That's before Nashville and the SEC tournament. So that would be what, a 22-9 regular season with a chance to maybe get 24, 25 wins, depending on how you do on Nashville. You could look up, and if they're a second weekend team, maybe they finish with a 27, 28, 26 win season. I'm not going to get caught up in as much about what the record is because we've seen this play out a few years ago where Kentucky's a 2 seed and they lose to St. Peter's. They're a 3 seed a year ago and they lose to Oakland in the first round. I'll give up some things to have a better product on the floor that can win you games in the NCAA tournament. And I think this system can do that. Can they defend? Can they rebound? If they do those two things at a pretty solid clip, I think the offense is going to carry them when they're going to beat some teams, Jack. But they're also going to lose some games because I do think they're going to line up against some teams that have more talent.
Yeah, I totally agree. While you were doing that, I was going through the realistic 25 options. You already thinking things continue to trend in the right direction with Jasper going into next week. Jasper and Malachi is your 1 and 2. Your first and second gets. I would say Braylon Mullins. I would say Tunde Yesufu as your 4 group, and I think you could get all 4 of those guys by the early signing period. And then you go into the spring and say, if we land one of Chris Sinak, in Nate Ament, maybe Caleb Wilson, but unlikely. But if you can land one of those 3 4s, you are talking a top 3 recruiting class nationally for Pope in year 1. And I think that's a really, really, really unbelievable haul. Obviously, you have to juggle kind of the transfer portal. You got to replace 7 super seniors, plus they already have 1 additional scholarship that remains open. And there's obviously the talk that they could expand to 15 scholarships. And if that's the case, then all hell breaks loose in college basketball. But we'll kind of stick with the script of 13 right now. But there are eight spots to fill. And if you go into the spring with 4 guys committed to you, signed for the early signing period, swing for the fences with that in the spring with one of those kind of premier 4s, land one of them, then you are sitting unbelievably pretty going into the portal season. Because then you only have to take 3 portal guys and you can make sure that they're damn good ones. Like, you don't have to kind of say, this guy comes from a mid-major and he played really well in some games, but we're taking a shot on this. There would be no, risks in that regard. You would take 3 sure things and build a 9-10 man group of absolute playmakers that are going to go, compete day one. So I think they're sitting pretty, just for me personally. And this kind of trends into J2 Centerfield's question, the latest on the recruiting for 25 class. I think that they are in a really, really unique position. The only in strong position, the only thing, like, word of caution I would have is you got to just kind of tread a little lightly and kind of just be able to pivot and be fluid, understand that things are fluid in the sense of, as one door closes, another may open, or as one unexpected one opens, maybe one that they thought was going to be the case is going to have to close, because if you're going to take this can't miss opportunity, you go, well, sorry, this kid's ready to commit before you are. Unfortunately, we now have to go this direction. So there's a lot of that kind of picking and choosing and kind of covering a lot of bases for this staff right now, where they're not going to get everybody that they've offered. They've offered 15 guys. They're not going to land all of them, but they feel pretty good that they could get in closing position with most of them and land definitely 4 to 5, definitely 4, potentially 5. So that's kind of the way they're navigating. Had things gone the other direction with Jasper, that turns Braylon Mullins into, as the dynamic shooter, do whatever it takes to land that guy, whatever. There's some overlap in skill set with Jasper and Braylon. So now it kind of becomes we have room for both of you. We would love for both of you to come, but Braylon, do you want to be a part of this as well? Are you comfortable sharing some shots with Jasper? That's a real question, and one that they are actually dealing with currently. So some of those things to keep in mind. My ideal scenario is that they are able to land both. I still think that they would be in a strong position with Braylon, maybe not the favorite the way they would have been without Jasper, but I think that they're still in a prime position alongside the likes of UConn, Duke kind of sniffing, Indiana not giving up, but it kind of being a UConn or Kentucky battle. I think that they could still slide in there. And Tunde, I think that they're in a really, really, really solid spot with Tunde. But as J2 Centerfield said on KS Board earlier, there are some overlaps there with Otega Owe's skill set. Do you go all in on shooting, knowing that you have Otega likely coming back, assuming he doesn't turn into an NBA draft prospect, which would be ideal? Then you do push for another high school kid. So there's a lot of kind of moving parts that you have to navigate. But all things considered, they feel unbelievable about the guys that they have offered and being in closing position going into the fall with the guys that are ready to make decisions right away. I would be fairly shocked if they don't have 4 going into the fall. I guess signed in the fall, going into the spring, maybe swinging for the fences on a 5th.
Yeah, and just looking into the future here a little bit, I know I've talked a ton about year 3, about where I think by year 3 you kind of got your roster where you want it to be when it comes to retaining players, to high school recruiting, to you're adding a transfer to every single spring. You're kind of targeting what your team needs are. Jack, I had this thought last week, and we didn't really get to talk about it on last week's show there with Jimmy, but there are a couple of guys on this team this year that I hope emerge into not significant roles, but good enough to get minutes and be in the rotation to then build towards the future. I don't know what it's going to hold for Colin Chandler, but if we look up and he's, say, 8th man at some point this season, and he's good enough to be on the floor, not so good that he's out the door after 1 year, I think that's great. Brandon Garrison is the other guy, and then Otega Owe. I'm starting to see if you can find Garrison's going to play, always going to play. The question will be, what is Chandler's role? How much does he get this season? Is he ready to emerge and play some minutes? There's going to be some guys that are transferred in here, Jack, that I think are going to do a little bit less than maybe what we expect, just because it's a new environment. Is Kobe Bragg going to be healthy? Like, there's a lot of things to kind of take into account here and factors. But if you could get those three guys solid rotation minutes, experience, and then you go out in the spring, and I'm telling you, there's going to be a key need for a veteran point guard. And I think Kentucky's going to be on the market for one of those top 3, top 4 transfers. I think they're going to be able to possibly land it, given they're going to be able to see what Kentucky has. I think a versatile 4 that can slide and play some 3, but can also guard, shoot the ball, play the 4, has some strength to them. I think that's going to be another need. And then you got these guys that you just named and talking about in this freshman class. Year 3 might become year 2. You might can blend all that stuff together if you can finish strong with this class that you're currently recruiting. And you're able to retain some guys too. I didn't even name Travis Perry, Trent Noah. Those are 2 wild card guys that I want to see how they develop this year. But that's just a couple of thoughts that I've had over the last 7 to 10 days that maybe I speed up the transition to what I think Mark Pope wants one of his rosters to look like. The one that he currently has, system-wise, skill set-wise, when it comes to shooters and things, I think that's what he wants it to look like. But I think more so some high upside guys being in the mix more, not as old. I don't think 7 super seniors is what he's going to always want, because then you're having to still gut it and replace it. Retention, elite high school recruiting, hit the transfer portal, and go get the best in the transfer portal at spots that you need them to be in.
My favorite question of the entire day comes from Bagel McCoy. If you could have one of the following for this upcoming season, which would you choose? 1, Travis Perry becomes 7'3". 2, Andrew Carr is given Rob Dillingham's handle and shift. 3, Lamont Butler has the exact same 3-point shooting abilities as Steph Curry.
I'm not taking Lamont Butler. What do you mean? Like,
I mean, if you're telling me that arguably the best perimeter defender in high school basketball then becomes the best shooter in the history of the sport.
Although nobody's blocking Travis Perry at 7'3" and shooting 3, so maybe he becomes the best shooter in the sport. I don't know, but you're giving me a guaranteed equivalent to Steph Curry. I'm taking that every single time.
Although the idea of Andrew Carr and his goofiness having Rob Dillingham's shiftiness is the most hilarious visual you can imagine. But also Travis Perry at 7'3". Although maybe this is like kind of a stereotype, but I feel like Travis Perry bigger is just Andrew Carr. And now Sean disappeared. I don't know what the hell just happened. Oh, there you go. You just
I had to do that.
Oh, good Lord. All right. We've somehow already talked for an hour and 2 minutes, so we got to really rapid fire this thing. What do you know about the defense? Try to quickly gloss over this, but Go Big Blue 94 says we've all heard about the Mark Pope's offense, but very little talk about defense. I know we wanted to talk a little bit before the season starts about kind of defensive philosophies, but kind of loosely big picture, what are you expecting with Mark Pope on that end?
And maybe that is something that we can still touch on in a film episode. Maybe if it's just a short 20, 25-minute segment, some things that they do defensively. But the thing, Jack, that's going to stand out is there's not going to be a stubbornness to adjust. And that's where I would put the defensive side of this. It's not going to be I'm going to have to play man-to-man. If we're getting torched in man-to-man, we're going to stay in man-to-man because you got to be able to play man-to-man. There are coaches that refuse to play zone because it's always if you're playing zone, then that means you can't guard. Well, sometimes if you're playing zone, it means we're going to win a basketball game. I'm going to play zone for 5 or 6 possessions. Mark Pope's going to do some of those things. They're going to mix it up and keep teams off balance. The same way that they do things offensively, they're going to do that same approach on the defensive end of the floor. I think the one thing that's going to be different here at Kentucky is the athleticism that he's going to have. at some of these positions. I think that's going to allow them to do some different things. Do they get after it and trap in the half court? Do they pick up and apply some token pressure, or maybe try to speed teams up to then play the pace and transition that Kentucky wants to play? Like, this isn't going to be a team that's going to throw lobs on you at the rim like we've seen John Calipari have in the past, where they wanted to play quick. This is a team that's going to rebound and run to the corners, and they're going to hit threes on you in transition. And then they're going to drag screen it, get downhill, and get things started. That's a pace that you want to play. You can dictate that by making teams uncomfortable on the defensive end of the floor. And that's where that points per possession starts to come into play, where you're playing at an up-tempo style of play, Jack.
I just can't get the thought of Travis Perry being Andrew Carr, just grown up and taller. It just, I think that's it.
Yeah, and then it's not Rob with the shifts, it's Carr with the shifts, and that actually makes sense.
It'd be like Pope going over to Argentina and driving that stick shift over with the rental car. It all adds up. It's all starting to come together. McBeal Nut says, now that Pope has been here there's no way we're going to be able to get through all these, by the way. Now that Pope has been here for a few months, what do you see as his biggest strength compared to Coach Cal? What do you see as his biggest weakness compared to Coach Cal? Or maybe in simpler terms, what things does he do better than Cal? What things does he not do as well as Cal? I'll start. I think the all gas, no brakes, just endlessly being pulled in a million different directions and being able to navigate that well, I think has to be his biggest strength. I'm worried about burnout for him. I think that there is going to come a day where he needs a hiatus and kind of disappear from the world for a minute. I don't know when that is going to be, but he's going to need it sometime very, very soon. But he's handled that unbelievably well. And there were some people that have been around the program that are no longer with the program when Cal was there, that kind of mentioned that when the world stopped during COVID, that Cal kind of used to be that way, but then kind of found comfort and got content in ways and put people around him that were very comfortable and like kind of operating not in the go. So I won't say that's always been a flaw of his, because Cal's always been a grinder. But in recent years, when he kind of saw what that looks like and kind of his world was able to kind of hit pause for a second, he enjoyed it. He got comfortable with that. And Pope is the exact opposite of that. So I guess if you're looking for direct comparison in contrast, I would say that's probably the most glaring one right now. Sean, what would you think?
I think the one where they're the same to me is, I think they both knew where they were and where they are. Like, even though the struggles were there, Jack, I think that Cal always knew that Kentucky and what it demanded. Like, I don't think he ever really shied away from what it demanded. And, even at the end of it, and we don't know, maybe 5-6 years from now, when it's all over for Cal and there's some documentary and he actually has a sit-down interview with somebody, maybe he talks about where he feels things went wrong in Lexington. But the day that he sat down there talking about that he thinks that this program needs to hear a different voice, I think he meant that. I think he truly, it set into him in that short window that, hey, these people are upset. And, this is a program that of this standard that you have to be able to do it at this level. But I think they both have always understood where they are. Pope, it's easier to, because he played here, but Cal also coached against this program and always had dreams of wanting to coach here. So both are unique in that sense. But maybe the contrast in things here would be, I think that Pope has more to prove.
Mm-hmm.
Cal wanted a title. Early on, Cal wanted a national championship, especially the way he didn't get the one at Memphis. He was driven to win one early, and it aligned with what he was doing with the NBA draft. And then I think as time went along, I think it became about getting guys to the NBA, and that's not, I will never knock him for changing lives.
Mm-hmm.
He did an excellent job at that. We'll continue to do that at Arkansas. But I think that they didn't align with what his philosophy was to what was actually happening with Pope. I think Pope is always going to have a chip on his shoulder because it's personal here. And I think that's going to be the thing that's different. If something's not working, Jack, I don't think he's going to be too stubborn to not attempt to change it. Cal got stubborn and refused to change it. And it eventually kept poking holes in the ship and it sank. So that's where I would think the difference is I think that for Pope, this is home. For Cal, it wasn't home. This is home for Mark Pope.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, I would say what Cal has on Pope right now is just sample size, tangible success. That's been a hurdle that Pope has just not been able to overcome. I mean, the reason why there's been so much interest on Jasper's side in Nate Oates in Alabama is because the vision that kind of Pope is selling right now for Kentucky as a kind of here's what our plan is to be is exactly what Nate Oates is actually doing right now in turning that into Final Four success and turning that into draft success. So those kind of questions are the reason why we even had the back and forth with Jasper is because they're fighting other teams that have that level of success, and Cal being the one that has the most success in terms of putting guys in the NBA and having, racking up wins and so on and so forth. So that it's just complicated that he'll get there. It just takes time. Everybody starts somewhere. Pat Kelsey, 60 miles down the road, has never won a postseason game either. He's having to answer those same questions. Why, he's not Rick Pitino yet. He's not, Denny Crum. He has to build up to that point because he's never personally achieved it, although the program has seen it in the past. So it's just a different thing that Pope is having to navigate that he will absolutely get to, but just not on Cal's level yet.
Did you read the Jeff Borzello story about Andy Enfield and stuff when he took the job at SMU and how it created the domino effect of what happened with Cal at Arkansas and Pope at Kentucky? And
I saw the headline. I didn't get to read it.
Like even Pope thought it was done when Scott Drew's family was getting off a plane. Like he said in the story in a quote that he was sitting there with his youngest daughter and they thought it was done. And then the next morning the report comes out that Scott Drew's staying and they're like, oh man, like this is really happening. And then he gets the Kentucky offer like shortly after. So it's wild to think how it all unfolded. But Mark Pope is in a spot that if you ask him, I don't know if he ever thought he'd ever be in this spot. And I think that he's going to take that and I think he's going to put it on his shoulder and it's going to drive his success. I'm with you though. You cannot go at the rate that he has had to go for the last 5 months and sustain it. 1, be healthy, 2, be happy, and 3, have it last 15 years like Cal did. There's got to be some type of, this is where you got to lean on your staff. You got to lean and you got to get something established that then works. But right now I think that he's had to do so much, Jack. But I see a guy that's going to work tirelessly to get this program back to where it's supposed to be. And that gives me a ton of confidence. I was having a discussion with somebody yesterday and they texted me. They said, Mark Pope's going to win a national championship here. I think he will. When you got a guy that works that hard, if he can just sell his program, get some success here. I'm not asking for a national championship or even a Final Four appearance in year 1. I just want this program to be fun, to look good, and to have something to sell going into year 2. Then you start building your rosters how you want it, and then you get your own blueprint of what Kentucky basketball, this version of it is. And I think that he's a smart coach. I think he has a great mind. You said it perfectly, talking about, Cal didn't start as a Hall of Famer when he was at UMass. These guys build Hall of Fame careers because of what they do over the longevity of it. Who's to say that Mark Pope's not a Hall of Fame coach in 20 years? Maybe it's all at Kentucky.
Hunter Hartley talked about Norlander's article with the anonymous coach quote that said Louisville's still little brother. On that note, in that article, one of the coaches said that basically every coach with a pulse in the history of Kentucky basketball has won a national championship. If you can build a stable culture in Lexington, odds are pretty darn good that you're going to come away with a national championship at some point. That's all it takes. It sounds easier said than done, obviously, and it is. I mean, that's not to say, you talk to some people that know Billy Gillispie personally and say, had he not had those demons, he would have been that guy, because the X's and O's, he was brilliant. He just couldn't kind of overcome some of those internal demons. Eddie Sutton. I mean, go down the list of some of the ones that just didn't work. There was they just couldn't build the culture fit in the long-term sustained success that if Pope is able to do quickly and in a hurry, it would be, it'd be in a massive historical upset, just knowing the sample size of this program's history with 5 different guys winning it all. It would be a pretty substantial upset if Pope wouldn't be able to do that, given our resources and the platform and, what you're able to have as being at Kentucky. So the job kind of coaches itself to some extent. Like, if you're able to sell your brand and sell your vision, as you said, Sean, the other stuff should fall into place. And that's kind of the next step for Pope to kind of see this success that he's selling right now kind of come to fruition. So let's take a couple more of these. I mean, we have dozens upon dozens more, and we would be here for 4 hours if we did all this. Maybe what I'll do is
our last one.
Yeah, the ones that I can't answer right now, I will answer the rest on KSR Plus. So if you go use our promo code Homegrown actually, this one is the kickoff special, which I'll get that promo code pulled up right now. But you get a 50% off annual subscription. You can get all these answers written and sent to you directly. So that's definitely the way to do it if you are doing that. That is promo code Kickoff24 to celebrate the start of Kentucky football season. Go subscribe to KSR Plus for all of the latest intel. You get it first. KS Board always eats first, and you get your questions answered on this show by being a subscriber. So go on and do that. Let's see. Let's do a couple more of these. What do you think the floor, medium, and ceiling outcome for this year's Kentucky team is? Can you give a record prediction on how they will do in the tournament? You answered kind of the last one, but I like that floor, medium, and ceiling outcome from Connor Rigg.
Yeah, the ceiling for this team, to me, if you get in the NCAA tournament and the bracket opens up, it's all about matchups, right? And I think that this team is going to be able to shoot the ball well, which bodes well for you in the NCAA tournament. They got guys that hit free throws. That's also going to help you win close games. It's all going to come down to the defense and the rebounding and the physicality and some depth. This is also a team that should have some depth. I don't know the depth of talent, but they're going to have depth. The ceiling, to me, Jack, I would cap it, let's say an Elite Eight. Let's just put it in Elite Eight, like Elite Eight, Final Four. And if you get to an Elite Eight, it's matchup based. You may get a team that you're playing against that you can beat and get to a Final Four. But I would say Elite Eight, Final Four is a ceiling, but lean more towards Elite Eight. The floor, I don't think this team's missing the NCAA tournament.
I don't either.
I would say middle of the pack finish in the SEC, first game exit NCAA tournament floor. Medium would be you're in that range of 4 to 5 to 6 SEC regular season. You win 23, 24 games, and you find yourself playing for a chance to make it to the second weekend or make it to a Sweet 16. That would be the medium for me.
Yeah, I almost kind of want it to be tighter and say floor is round of 32, medium is Sweet 16, and ceiling is Elite 8, because that I feel really comfortable about those 3 spots. Don't feel like they'll be one and done in the tournament, and I would love it to be a Final Four championship team, but it feels a little ambitious. But I like that window. I like that round of 32 to Sweet 16 or to Elite 8 in year one, and we'll see what happens moving forward. And that goes into the next question from Cool Cat 87. How soon do you think we get back to the Final Four and championship level teams?
Year 4.
That's a while.
And the reason I'll say year 4 would be when you go back to Patino, it was year 4, if I'm not mistaken, but that was obviously a different time in Kentucky basketball when you're talking that you couldn't play in the NCAA tournament. Cal, after Billy, was year 2 getting to a Final Four, but we know that the times in college basketball were different. Like a lot of teams were younger, and Cal was super young, had a lot of talent. Tubby was handed a really good situation with a really good roster at a time where guys weren't leaving early, so it was easier to transition. I'll add a couple of years there for Pope just because the times of college basketball and what they're navigating with NIL and stuff, it's difficult. But I think that Pope has the right mindset and idea to get it there. Now, could it get there sooner and it be year 3? Yeah, you take it. I don't think any of us really thought that the transition that Cal had was going to happen as quickly as what it did. Winning a national championship in year 3, there were nobody thought that was going to happen. So year 4, I would take it, but you want to see growth in that. To me, there's a couple of things that this program needs to do this year. If you can find a way to beat Duke, it'd be great, but I don't think you have to. I think you got to win an NCAA tournament game. If you win an NCAA tournament game, get the feeling back in March and compete, I think that's a big deal. You got to beat Cal in Rupp Arena. Those are two things that you got to happen. And I think beating Tennessee, the team that's been right there with you going head to head at the top of the league. I'm not even going to stick Alabama in there. Alabama, we know, is going to be a really good team, but beating a rival in Tennessee, I think, could go a long way for Mark Pope too in year 1, whether you get both of them or whatever. But I think those are a couple of things that I think that you got to do. And then Louisville, you beat Louisville, but we're so used to doing that.
Pepperoni Pen, would you rather fight 2 kangaroos or 10 8-year-old kids, and why? I'm beating the hell out of 10 8-year-olds. I'm just being honest. Like I get it. I know they're built differently now, and like they're getting stronger. It's like, what are they feeding these kids? It's like the chickens with the hormones and stuff. The chickens are this freaking big now. It's like the 8-year-olds now. They walk down the street and you're like, damn, that kid looks 17. I get it, but they're still 8 at heart, and I feel like a kangaroo could kick my ass. So that's the only that's the only reason why I'm hanging on to the beating up some 8-year-olds. I feel really comfortable beating the hell out of some 8-year-olds.
It'd be really good video content either way, but I mean, not the 8-year-olds. I mean, you go to jail, but like, you know what I mean? But
you'd go to jail for fighting a kangaroo too, wouldn't you?
If it's self-defense, right, and the kangaroo's attacking you, then what can you really do? You're going to stand
there. Would it be
not
self-defense with some 8-year-olds?
I mean, yeah, but I guess
it's self-defense if you get beat up, but if you beat up the 8-year-old, I feel like that's when you get arrested.
I'm going to try the kangaroos.
But man, they got that reach on you. Like, I've seen videos of kangaroos squaring up and like, and they're more agile. They got that they got the hops. They got the bounce. They got the Muhammad Ali bounce.
Man, you got me there. That's a tough one.
I'm just saying. And then the response to it, wasn't expecting this. What did not have this on my bingo card? In response to that question, cat's on top of your girl. Humans, pound for pound, are among some of the strongest biters. I know for a fact I could bite through a calf muscle when I was 8. Not interesting. I don't know why you would know that. So if it is an open field, I would take the 8-year-olds because I could divide them. If it is an octagon, then kangaroos, for sure, I would use my bite to try and win. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. Visionaire says, who wins an arm wrestling contest, Jack or Sean? I'll take you. I'll take you, buddy. The real question is Mark Pope or Mark Stoops. Who wins? Mark Stoops has that like drunk arm wrestling in a bar vibe where he it gets like 2:00 in the morning. He's had 8 Budweisers and he goes, I bet I could beat you in an arm wrestling contest. Like that's Mark Stoops, Mark Pope, I just feel like, I'm a lover, I'm not a fighter. I'll let you win. He kind of gives off that dad energy where Mark Stoops definitely feels like he's going to look at you in the eye and say, I could beat you in an arm wrestling contest.
I've already got a video sent to me clipped of you saying I beat the hell out of some 8-year-olds. That's all it says. Mark Pope's got that reach, man.
Oh, man. Dubsack says, Jackson, you're talking about beating up 8-year-olds. I'm out. Understand the context, Dubsack. I'm not actually doing it. It was the question.
See, that's why
they're kangaroos.
Like, I would let a kangaroo probably kick my ass just for the thought of not beating up an 8-year-old. But then again, if you're put in that situation, yeah, I'm taking the kangaroos. I'll let Jack take the 8-year-olds.
Whatever. If I get canceled over fighting 8-year-olds, then it wasn't meant to be anyway.
Mark Pope's got that like extension though, like that long arm.
That's true.
Where you're sitting there, and for me,
but arm wrestling's about staying high and tight. It's about, you don't want long arms. You want to stay up so you can go bow.
Yeah, but then again, like I got that awkward where if I arm wrestle guys with longer arms, I feel like that, like my elbow is like coming up off the thing the whole time just because I don't know. Mark Pope's probably stronger than what he looks. How about him? How about those pictures of him like relaxing and them having a good time and stuff that the team's been doing? Like, pretty sure he was sleeping in one of them. You know what I'm talking about? Like
just this past weekend on their retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. And like
that's a dude that was just kicked back, relaxed, and
he jumped. They just released the video of him jumping in the lake. That was awesome.
But no, I thought that was a really cool thing, and you're seeing like all these team building things that they're doing leading up to the season, which I think is really cool. We've seen them on a golf course, and I thought I was bad at golf. Oh boy, some of those guys are really bad at golf, but having a good time doing it together and building some team chemistry, not out beating up 8-year-olds and fighting kangaroos.
Oh man, that's going to be
incredible.
What?
This show's incredible. Just the entertainment and how we keep people entertained. It's just at another level.
Is that what we call this? Is me getting canceled for saying I'm going to beat up some 8-year-olds? Is that our version of entertained? Or
what we need is we've had sources say signs at SEC Nation. Now all we need is the Louisville game. Me like with the Pat Kelsey thing up in the UK student section. We need something of you. Like we need to take over the student section with signs this year.
Oh, goodness gracious. I'm all the way for it. All right. Let's wrap up there. Any questions I did not hit? Once you go subscribe to KSR Plus, I'll answer all of the rest, including some about, hey, is Kentucky going to hire a GM? What about their NIL situation? Is that in a good spot? Not talking about that publicly here, but I will absolutely talk about it over on KS Board. Make sure you go subscribe to KSR Plus using promo code KICKOFF24 for 50% off annual subscription. You do not want to miss that discount. It is the place to be. All of the intel, all of the breaking news, all the scoop, it is found there and there only before the social media gets a hold of it. And then at that point, it's just lost in the ether. So appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. This was a blast. Things got off the rails as they usually do, but hey, that's what makes sources say. Sean, where can fans find your work?
It's right there at @ Coach S. Smith.
I could just read it, but I feel like I want you to introduce yourself as Coach S. Smith. C. Smith, S. Smith.
Coach S. Smith. It's weird. My middle name starts with a C, so Coach C.S.C. Smith. It would have been a bad one. I still wish I could get rid of that _, but I can't. There's no other handle that makes sense.
Now you're locked in. Now you've introduced yourself too many times as _ Coach S. Smith, so
I know,
you physically can't anymore.
I almost wore that hoodie that's in that graphic of me and you. That'd have been pretty funny because I didn't even know Daniel was putting that up.
I was not going to wear that Super Batcat shirt, but I do love Goose Tees, so make sure you go check out their stuff too as well. Love the show. This has been a blast. Make sure you go subscribe. Find my work at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Subscribe here on the KSR YouTube channel. Go read my stuff on KentuckySportsRadio.com. We'll be back next time for the Jam Pack Sources Say podcast. maybe we're going to have one surprise episode before the Jasper Johnson episode with a special guest, another assistant coach from the Kentucky basketball team. You do not want to miss that one. That'll come later in the week. We will see you then.